wait to get to Mapletown. My favorite place to be, Mapletown and me. Living each day, we laugh and we play. My favorite place to be, Mapletown and me. Can't wait to get to Mapletown. My favorite place to be, Mapletown and me. Living each day, we laugh and we play. My favorite place to be, Mapletown and me.
This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon! Caring is what counts. When Jerry Laybourne took over as president of Nickelodeon in 1984, one of the things she did to rehabilitate the channel's image was gradually introduce animation into the lineup. This came at a very steady pace. 2 new animated shows per year. 1984, it was Belle and Sebastian and Danger Mouse. 1985 was The Adventures of the Little Prince and Star Trek. And 1986 was The Mysterious Cities of Gold and Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea. And it would seem Nickelodeon was going to follow that same pattern into 1987, with 2 English-dubbed Japanese animes about anthropomorphic animal children going on adventures, aimed for more of a preschool demographic, premiering a mere 2 weeks apart from each other in late May and early June. However, despite initial appearances, 1987 would be the year the cycle was broken, with a 3rd new anime show premiering in October. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, premiering on May 18th, 1987, Nickelodeon would take us along for a pleasant little journey to Mapletown.
Nick Jr. says, come on.
All aboard!
Climb aboard and let's all go to Mapletown, a place where porcupines wear tuxedos and bulldogs wear badges.
How much farther is it?
Well, you know you're getting close when you see a cat who can cook,
Pretty yummy, huh?
a postmaster bunny, or a deer who knows kung fu.
Next stop, Mapletown.
Here we are.
It's a small town, but it sure is pretty.
It's Mapletown, the place you want to be, every day on Nick Jr.
Life is moving fast for Patty Rabbit. Her father has taken a position as postman for a sleepy little Canadian village called Mapletown, where a lion is mayor, a bulldog is a police officer, and a deer is the school teacher. Patty is excited. The town and surrounding nature is beautiful. But life gets a bit more complicated when a vicious-looking bandit, Wild Wolf, robs the train and makes off with the father's mailbag. Feeling some blame for what happened, Patty rushes into the woods after him. There, she meets Bobby Bear, an outdoorsy little boy who loves to explore and forage. While a misunderstanding has them bickering at first, the two swiftly become friends and team up against the threatening Wild Wolf. The day is saved, and the Rabbit family is welcomed to Mapletown with open arms. Most episodes of Mapletown involve Patty Rabbit and Bobby Bear visiting one of the local families and becoming personally involved with their dramas. Danny Dog wants to go out and play, but his mother doesn't treat him like a big kid. She's afraid he'll get hurt. Danny's father is a doctor, and when some of the medicine he needs for Bobby gets destroyed, Danny decides to break his mother's rules to find some local medicinal herbs to help.
It's time to get back to your homework.
Danny?
What's wrong, Danny?
Come on. Tell her, Danny. Tell her, please.
Mother, listen. No more homework today. I'm sorry, but I have to find a plant that will help Bobby's arm.
It's true, Mrs. Dog.
Danny! Oh, my. My baby! Must have got a chill or something. Quickly, come into the house.
Maybe that was a mistake. Poor Danny.
Susie Squirrel's father is so caught up in his work that she starts thinking he doesn't love her anymore. Patty tries to come up with ways for little Susie to connect with her father, but everything keeps going wrong. It isn't until a confrontation with Wild Wolf that father and daughter are able to connect and make up.
Oh, Papa, I'm so sorry.
Sorry? About what, dear?
The beautiful dress that you made for Fanny, it's ruined. Look.
Susie, I don't care about that. All I care about is you, my darling.
Oh, Papa, I love you. I love you so much. Just think, if it weren't for that meanie Wild Wolf, this never would have happened.
The Badger family run the local forest patrol, a team who save animals and keep the woods safe. But they won't let their youngest daughter, Betty, join because it's too dangerous for a little girl like her. Betty wants to prove them wrong, so she recruits Patty, Bobby, and the local rich girl, Fanny Fox, to form a new patrol. But it's not as easy or as fun as Betty thought it would be.
Relax, Dad. I think Betty's got all the makings of a forest ranger.
Now hold on, I just won't allow it.
It's just because he loves you, Betty. You're his youngest child and the only daughter that he's got.
How about if she only comes out with us a couple of times a week, Dad? We'll take good care of her.
Well, I can see I'm outnumbered on this. You kids do what you want to do. By golly, she's got a lot of courage at that. I'm kind of proud of her.
Wild Wolf factors into each of these episodes in some capacity, sometimes as a threat, usually as a nuisance. His crimes range from pocketing baked goods to straight-up kidnapping children.
Don't you tell me to be quiet, not when I came out here to help.
Oh, I wish that you had never found me.
You two be quiet! What? You two had better behave yourselves while I'm out delivering the ransom note. Do I make myself perfectly clear? If I had kids like that, I'd pay somebody to keep them.
In one episode, Wild Wolf has a gun drawn. There's a lot more guns than you'd expect, even in the American version. But the teacher, Miss Deer, manages to scare him off by pretending to know martial arts.
I'm tired of being Mr. Nice Guy. I guess I'm just gonna have to be me. I think I'm in trouble again. I knew it.
But it rarely gets even that intense. Mapletown is a show about the way kids and adults can miscommunicate, how parents can sometimes come off as cold to their children. And while that might spin off into little adventures, it's often resolved in the end by the children and the parents talking it out and reaching an understanding with each other, saying they're sorry and working to have a stronger bond moving forward. It's a very sweet, very charming, very pretty little show. But Mapletown is also something that Nickelodeon had been very deliberately avoiding up to this point. It was toyetic, in that it was a show created to tie in and promote a toy line.
Can't wait to get to Mapletown, my favorite place to be, Mapletown and me.
Welcome to Mapletown, where the animals live just like you.
Come on, Patty, let's play outside. Okay, Bobby.
Collect Patty Rabbit, Bobby Bear, and 8 different Mapletown families. You can dress them and move their head, arms, and legs. Figures, families, and play sets, each sold separately.
Living each day, we laugh and we play, my favorite place to be, Mapletown and me.
Ew, I'm Tonka.
Children's television in America in the 1980s can be defined by toyetic animation. With the Reagan administration dissolving many FCC regulations towards children aimed at a young audience, many studios jumped on board to create shows with a significant motivation towards selling merchandise. He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, Care Bears, shows like that. While you could occasionally find actual artistry in these shows as well, it was nonetheless a period of television defined by capitalism over quality, and it was something that Nickelodeon had avoided. Oh, some of their shows had merchandise. You Can't Do That on Television had green slime shampoo, and Double Dare had a few home games. But the merchandise was secondary. They weren't shows produced to push merchandise onto kids. Jerry Laybourne was very conscious about this issue. She had a conversational relationship with activist Peggy Charon, who advocated against toyetic programming. And Laybourne was very particular about the commercials Nickelodeon would air. Even Laybourne's predecessor, Cy Schneider, seemed disinterested in toyetic content, though perhaps that's because Schneider just didn't understand modern television trends that well. So, here was a cartoon with a tie-in toy line, with commercials for those toys airing on Nickelodeon. That's quite the change.
Mapletown and me. Look, Bunny, here comes the school bus. Come on, Patty, hurry up. Time for school.
The Mapletown bus holds 6 Mapletown friends.
Sit near me, Patty. Okay.
Genuine Mapletown figures and bus, each sold separately.
Look, there's Danny Dog. Next stop, Mapletown School. Wait, I forgot my lunch. It's okay, we'll share. Living each day, we laugh and we play. My favorite place to be, Mapletown and me. Is it lunch yet?
And don't get me wrong, the show is high quality, There's a lot of art in it, the animation is gorgeous, and a show having toys doesn't make it toyetic. DuckTales had toys, but no one would call it toyetic. It's toyetic if the merchandise was a major consideration in the show's conception. And for Mapletown, that was definitely the case. Mapletown, aka Mapletown Stories, aka Me Peru Town Monogatari, originally ran for one 52-episode season in Japan on January 1986 to January 1987. Produced by Toei Animation, the show was a trend chaser. Obviously, it had the distinct flavor of the Eurocentric animes of the 70s and 80s, a certain world masterpiece theater vibe, but if you were looking towards the toy shelves, Mapletown's origins become a bit more clear. It's a ripoff of Sylvanian Families.
森の仲間と楽しいパーティー。ほら、素敵でしょ？わー、綺麗！エポック社シルバニアファミリー。あら、まだかな？
Sylvanian Families. Today's moving day. We're putting things away. Sylvanian Families.
Sylvanian Families, the originals, has such a nice house and furniture with little doors and drawers that open and close. It makes moving day fun. Figures and accessories sold separately.
Sylvanian Families, to collect and love.
Produced by Japanese toy company Epoch and premiering in 1985, a year before Mapletown, Sylvanian Families consisted of little anthropomorphic animal families living in a quaint small town, with the rabbit and bear families being the main characters. Sold with doll houses and various accessories, Sylvanian Families was a quick success, not just in Japan but around the world, with an American and UK distribution handled by Tomy. Though in the early 90s the toy line was rebranded in America as Calico Critters. Along with great sales numbers, the line would win 3 consecutive Toy of the Year awards from the British Association of Toy Retailers between 1987 and 1989. The Mapletown toys released a year later, and they were virtually identical. Both lines sold family packs with 4 figures each, and even the costuming was echoed between the two lines. The only meaningful difference between Sylvanian Families and Mapletown was that the Mapletown figures had open hands that allowed them to hold accessories. That's it. The similarities were so close that in America, commercials for Sylvanian Families advertised themselves as the originals, so as to not confuse you as to who was ripping off who. On the toy shelves, Sylvanian Families was a clear winner, and still is, because unlike Mapletown, they're still making them, and they sell pretty well. There's even a small Sylvanian Friends theme park in Japan. But Mapletown did have one thing that Sylvanian Families didn't have: a high-quality animated tie-in program. There was eventually a Sylvanian Families cartoon in 1987, but it was a lot cheaper, a lot shorter, and ultimately less successful. I mean, what you gonna do when you don't have an animation juggernaut like Toei in your corner? And Toei didn't skimp on the talent. The concept was developed and many of the scripts written by Chifude Asakura, who is known for Eurocentric style anime such as Lady Georgie and Onegai Samaye Don, as well as something called Hello Spank, which I don't know anything about, but I will not pass up the opportunity to say the words Hello Spank. Assistant director was a fresh-faced 22-year-old Kunihiko Ikuhara, who had become one of the main directors of the Sailor Moon franchise and was the man to put revolutionary girl Utena on the screen. And speaking of Sailor Moon, Mapletown was the directorial debut of Junichi Sato, who would go on to direct the first 2 seasons of Sailor Moon, as well as Ojimaru Doremi, Princess Tutu, and Sergeant Frog. There's almost certainly an academic paper to be written about how Mapletown influenced the look and feel of Sailor Moon, but I don't feel qualified to write it. One thing the two shows do share is a love of pastels. Mapletown is a gorgeous show, the prettiest animated program we've covered on Knacks thus far. Simple but distinct and expressive character designs blend well with rich, stylized backgrounds to give the whole thing a storybook come-to-life feel. A show created to sell knockoff toys has no business being this well crafted. The first season of Mapletown wrapped up on Japanese TV on January 11th, 1987, but audiences would only have to wait 1 week for season 2, which would take the series in a radically different direction. New Mapletown Stories' Palmtown chapter sees Patty Rabbit leave the idyllic little Lucy Maud Montgomery village and move to a very modern, very 80s coastal city called Palmtown. People today might actually be more familiar with Palmtown than OG Mapletown. Some clips and memes have gone around animation circles on social media, and there's a good chunk of it on YouTube. For whatever reasons, Toei Animation seems less likely to call copyright strikes on Palmtown videos than they are for Mapletown videos. Palmtown looks like a very neat twist on the Mapletown formula, but it did not receive an English dub, and for our purposes did not air on Nickelodeon, so I'll leave other anime YouTubers to take it on. In 1986, American toy company Tonka bought the rights to sell the toy line and broadcast the anime in the States for a cool $3 million, a bargain compared to starting a toyetic franchise from scratch. Tonka was no stranger to toyetic television, producing Challenge of the GoBots in 1984 and Pound Puppies in 1986. Tonka had also acquired the rights to the Spiral Zone toy line around the same time as Mapletown, and both toy lines were presented at the International Toy Fair in New York City in February of 1987, which included an actress walking around in a Patty Rabbit costume. Alas, I can't find a picture of that. The original plan was to sell Mapletown as a syndicated network television show. As such, Nickelodeon, who had produced a lot of their own English dubs for the shows they'd imported to their channel, didn't have a hand in dubbing Mapletown. Instead, dubbing and localization duties were given to Saban Productions. Why does their logo look so evil? It looks like a planet of dark antimatter that has fallen out of the negative zone and only Superman can stop it. We've brushed shoulders with Haim Saban before, as a composer for the Mysterious Cities of Gold, but this is when he starts to become a big name in children's media. Born in Egypt in 1944 before immigrating to Israel, Haim Saban got his start in the 1960s producing music and scamming his way into playing bass guitar for the rock band The Lions of Judah, a story worth a video on its own. In the 1970s, Saban moved to France and started producing music there, which is where he met up with composer Shuki Levy. The two quickly became friends and business partners. Together they formed Saban Productions in 1980, a company initially created to compose musical scores for French animation. The deal was, Saban does the music for your show for free, but then Saban keeps the publishing rights and can sell that soundtrack to other studios. Also, hey there musicians, we'll pay you this very low salary if you agree to waive your rights to royalties. You already know one of his early clients, Deke. Saban Productions produced soundtracks for Deke shows such as The Mysterious Cities of Gold, Inspector Gadget, Mask, and Dinosaurs. In 1983, Saban Productions moved to Los Angeles and would eventually expand into international distribution of television programming, including getting the foreign rights to Deke's entire library in 1986. Mapletown would be among the first non-Deke shows for Saban Productions, though it wasn't the first time Haim Saban worked directly with Toei. Famously, while on a business trip in Japan in 1985, Haim Saban became aware of Choudenshi Bioman, the 8th entry in Toei's long-running live-action superhero team series Super Sentai. Realizing its potential, Saban started pitching an Americanized adaptation of these shows, with new actors combined with Japanese costume and monster footage. He initially failed to sell the idea, but Saban believed in it so much that he would keep at it for the next 8 years. While there is no documentation saying as much, it's not hard to imagine a business-savvy guy like Haim Saban keeping business relations with Toei healthy by working on Toei's Mapletown. And I'd like to pause things right here, because it doesn't really come up in the behind-the-scenes story for this show, but it's worth talking about at some point, because Knacks will be seeing a lot of him for the rest of the 80s, and then again if we get to 2011. You see, Haim Saban is a garbage man, the poster child of capitalist greed. He has a history of underpaying talent, being difficult to work with, and oh yeah, being abusively homophobic. He's just a really shitty guy. But anyway, Tonka got the rights to Mapletown, and Saban Productions was put in charge of localizing it. And compared to, say, the hatchet job that was The Adventures of the Little Prince, Saban Productions did a pretty good job staying faithful to the original material. A lot of the people involved would carry over to Saban's Power Ranger franchise. ADR director Scott Page-Pagter would also do ADR for the first 2 seasons of Mighty Morphin and co-produce all the stuff between In Space and Wild Force. Husband and wife writing team Tony and Barbara Oliver would help create the franchise, and it's said that fan favorite character Tommy Oliver is named after them. Oh, and the supervising director was Robert V. Barron, who you may remember as Abraham Lincoln from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I'm not making this up.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
Saban Productions did make one major change to the source material, with the addition of live-action framing segments.
Hi! I'm making decorations for a birthday party. Whose birthday? Oh, it's Mapletown's birthday. That's right. Towns have birthdays just like people. And when a town has a birthday, everybody who lives there celebrates. Well, this year, as part of Mapletown's celebration, the children are going to put on a play. Oh, have you ever been in a play? Oh, it's such fun. Patty Rabbit and Fanny Fox and Bobby Bear and even Danny Dog all want to be in the play. Who do you think will be the best? Of course, Wild Wolf hasn't been invited to the play, but he might show up anyway, knowing him. What do you think? First, there's a contest to see who gets to be in the play. This contest is called an audition. We get to watch the audition and see who wins the contest. And then we'll get to see the play, too. Oh, won't this be exciting?
Played by Karen Hartman, Mrs. Maple is the only human being in Mapletown. She claims to be good friends with the locals, but seeing as how she's never actually involved in the stories, she's less like an active citizen and more like somebody who lives vicariously through their neighbors via their Facebook accounts.
Oh, speaking of trees, wait till you see what's going on in Mapletown. Fanny Fox's father is planning to cut down part of Maple Forest. Well, I don't have to tell you, Wild Wolf is upset. Mayor Dandelion is having a big problem trying to decide just what to do, and Patty Rabbit, Bobby Bear, and the rest of the children might lose their favorite place to play and explore. Well, we'd better watch and see how it's all going to turn out.
The Mrs. Maple stuff is alright, if completely unnecessary. The episodes can stand well enough on their own, but that brings us into Mapletown's weakest element. Again, this is a gorgeous show that's easy to get lost in, easy to wish you were there, playing with Patty Rabbit and Bobby Bear. The writing, however, leaves a little bit to be desired, especially when it comes to the moral lessons. The main issue here is the show's morality favors childhood over adulthood, which sounds weird. Well, of course it does, it's a kid's show. But let me show you what I mean with my least favorite episode. Episode 11, The House Made of Love, is a story about Kathy and Kevin Catt, the married couple who run Mapletown's local bakery. Kathy is all business, baking goods, running the register, keeping relationships up with customers. It's a lot of hard work, and she's exhausted. Kevin opts to do things at his own speed without telling his wife what he's doing and where he's going. While the store is swamped, Kevin is taking his sweet time collecting wild berries that they don't even need.
The sponge cake.
Hello, Kathy. I'm home.
Oh,
Did you miss me?
Kevin. Yes, I missed you. Where in the world have you been? Today was the busiest day ever, and I had to do everything all by myself.
Here.
Oh.
Look what I found.
Well, for your information, the delivery man already brought some this morning.
Huh?
Now I have more than I know what to do with.
Well, it looks like we'll be eating a lot of strawberries.
Kevin is clearly a crap man. He lets his wife do all the hard work while he bums around and takes no responsibility for himself, but manages to take half the credit. He is every awful husband and boyfriend brought up on relationship Reddits. But if you think the show is going to take Kathy's side, if it's going to say that Kevin is acting irresponsibly and he needs to start carrying his weight, well, that would be favoring adulthood, and Mapletown doesn't do that. No, the episode suggests that Kathy is the problem. That she's too uptight, that she's lost her childhood love for baking and is now too focused on the business side of things. It even starts affecting her cooking because there's less love put into it. Whatever that means.
Mrs. Bear, always a pleasure. Welcome.
I'm back for some more of your blueberry muffins.
All right. Did your family enjoy the cake?
Oh, well, to be honest, your cake's been just a little disappointing lately. Have you changed the recipe in any way?
Oh.
It might be my imagination. I could be wrong.
Oh.
Patty Rabbit and Bobby Bear end up teaming up with Kevin in order to fulfill a wish that the two cats made when they were children. That they were going to build a giant gingerbread house and live in it. So Kevin spends a ton of money the cats seemingly can't afford to spend, to build a house that'll last maybe an hour before it's just coated in an inch-thick layer of ants. Kathy has an emotional breakdown when seeing it.
Kevin? Oh! A gingerbread house. He kept his word after all these years.
Hope he can build it for you.
Oh.
I know I'm a little late, dear, but better late than never, huh?
I've become the type of grown-up I didn't want to be. I see that now.
You're a pretty wonderful grown-up if you ask me.
She's right, dear, and remember, it's never too late to become a kid again. Now come on and help me finish this thing.
Okay, fine, you're reconnecting with your childhood. The bakery is still failing, and it's still Kevin's fault. This isn't even a compromise. It isn't Kathy needs to loosen up, but also Kevin needs to take things more seriously. The episode is saying that Kathy is in the wrong by being a responsible adult, and Kevin gets away with everything by the show's moral code. This is what I mean. If it evokes fun and love, and most importantly, if it evokes childhood, Mapletown says it's unquestionably a good thing, a good behavior, even if that's just not true to life. I'm not saying it would be good TV if the episode ended with Kathy convincing Kevin to go over tax paperwork with her, but as is, this episode is giving children a very bad lesson about responsibility. Adults are just about always the ones wrong on this show. The adults are too smothering, they're too protective, they don't pay enough attention to their kids, they're too quick to assume guilt when something goes wrong, and or they don't express enough affection. And that's fine from time to time, but maybe, just maybe once in a while, you might want to have the child characters learn things too. These are the characters the young viewers are going to empathize with, after all. This dynamic gets pushed so far that in one episode, all of the adults in Mapletown just leave and let the children run the village by themselves. Not out of circumstances, they're not separated by powers beyond their control like bad weather or a rock slide. Every adult in Mapletown just goes, yeah, let's piss off. This is a good idea. Now, this is actually one of the more fun episodes, but it signifies the show's priorities. Mapletown is a children's power fantasy, where kids are always right and adults are always wrong, even if it goes against common sense or potentially good lessons for growing children. Remember, despite appearances, this is not a preschool educational program. Mapletown just does not have the same priorities as other rustic anthropomorphic animal shows like Little Bear or Franklin. This is a show made to sell knock-off toys, and as such, it's giving you play scenarios that empower the young characters, aka the characters whose toys children are more likely to play with. That's why the best episodes are the ones that are about the children having adventures over ones dealing with child-parent conflicts. Being trapped on a runaway hot air balloon, trying to perform a play for the town festival, or that one time the kids were given magic glass cubes that produce hallucinations. That's a weird one. Actually, I'm not sure if this even got an English dub. Tonka and Saban only localized 39 of the show's 52 episodes, and a definitive list of which episodes they chose does not exist. In April of 1987, 10 of the episodes were given a test run on local Fox affiliates, like WCGV out of Milwaukee or WTTG out of Washington, D.C. This was through a system known as barter syndication, meaning that a small network could get a show for free, not having to pay for a syndication package, but would instead allow the distributor to run their ads on other programs in that network. We'll give you Mapletown for free if you let us run commercials for Tonka toys during these other programs. After a couple of weeks of that, Nickelodeon picked up Mapletown, which became its regular home for the next couple of years, becoming a fixture of the Nick Jr. block in 1988. Nickelodeon didn't comment on its acquisition, at least there's no press release I could find. And I wish there was, because Mapletown feels like such an anomaly for Jerry Laybourne's Nickelodeon. On one hand, it's obvious why they picked up Mapletown. It's a quality animated show that slotted in with their efforts of serving the preschool demographic very nicely. On the other hand, it's a complete mystery why they picked up Mapletown. It's classic 80s toy-pushing capitalism that Nickelodeon was trying so hard to avoid at this time. Mapletown concluded its run on Nickelodeon on September 1st, 1989, after which it found a new home on the CBN Family Channel until 1990. Tonka would release a handful of episodes on VHS tapes in 1988 through a partnership with Family Home Entertainment, and that remains the best way to get the English dub episodes of the series. Man, these covers are all over the place. Sometimes the art is pretty nice, sometimes it's flat, but at least the characters are on model, and sometimes you get characters that aren't even in the show. There have been DVD releases in a few countries, but these remain hard to get a hold of and lack any English dub or subtitles. The Japanese DVDs, which is where a lot of this high quality footage originates from, costs $400 to import. Combined with Toei clamping down on YouTube uploads of the series, Mapletown is a hard thing to return to and reevaluate en masse. Mapletown is a beautiful, breezy, easy to get into show, even when I'm yelling at Kevin for being a crappy husband, but it is nonetheless the best case scenario of greedy capitalist practices in television. It's the embodiment of its own philosophy, where if you watch it with the mindset of a child, without a care in the world, it's easy to get wrapped up in the characters and adventures and wild wolf comedy hijinks and have a great time. Whereas if you watch it with the mindset of an adult, you find yourself stumbling over the fact that it's just one big commercial for a cheap knockoff toy line that promotes immature behavior. As this show so often enforces, it's better to be a kid than a grown-up sometimes.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time. Once upon a time, Japan fell in love with some koalas, and for a while, animes about cute koala adventures became the next big thing. This is just the first of two we'll be talking about on Knacks. Thank you all for watching, and doubly thank you to everyone who donated to the very successful Knacks book Kickstarter. If you'd like to continue supporting Knacks and other Pop Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, research materials, and clean socks. You can also support Knacks by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing to the channel, hitting that bell icon for notifications, following me on Twitter, sending a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, and sharing Knacks with all your friends. Thank you all so much. Black Lives Matter.